Welcome to the show where we break down the mental health stigma, navigate sobriety with humor, and prove that it's okay to laugh while you heal. Let's get real, let's get honest, and maybe a little weird. Growth is messy, but you don't have to do it alone. This is Sober Psychology. Hello, folks. Welcome back to Sober Psychology. Thank you for tuning in. Real quick, we have a lot to get into today, but I want to go ahead and just shout out, have a good appreciation post here. The response that I've gotten in the past couple of weeks is outrageous. You guys are rock stars. I freaking love you. All the people who have liked videos, who have shared videos, who have commented. I've had so many DMs of you guys reaching out and asking for certain questions, answers to certain questions, or clarity on certain things, giving me some ideas for the future. It's just been incredible. We recently, as of the day ago, started posting on TikTok, so that's a whole new world for me. I don't know how to do it, but I'm learning. But you know, we're up to 31 subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. I mean, it's slow, it's small, whatever, but it's more than I ever expected. Again, this isn't just about the numbers as much as it is about just being able to help. And I would love to be able to do more of this. So thank you all for the motivation. Thank you for the kindness. Now that we got the sappy stuff out of the way, it's time to trigger some people. That's what this episode is going to be about today. We're going to trigger some people. Okay. I want to break down the whole idea of the victim mentality. That's right. You're not special. You're not the sad, pitiful little victim that you think that you are. And we're going to talk about why not. It's going to be great. But we have a lot to get into, a lot of angles to this. I'm going to still try and keep it under that 40-minute mark for you guys. But again, you got any questions? You have any comments, concerns? You know, you're mad about something I said? There's a part of me that just wants to tell you to get over it. But then also, I care enough to where I'd like to hear you and why you have a problem with it. And so we can figure it out. But chances are, if you're a human being and you've lived any length of life, you have been affected by victim mentality. Whether you've been the one with the victim mentality or you've been involved with someone who has the victim mentality, it pretty much covers all corners of the human narrative, and it runs rampant a lot in culture, especially today. We see it a lot today. Again, we'll get into that. I have some personal experiences I'll share. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it, but we're going to get into defining what is the victim mentality. We're going to get into how the victim mentality develops. We're going to get into the cost of holding on to that victim mentality. And then we'll talk about how to break free from that victim mentality. Again, there's a lot to go into. I could make this a 5-hour episode. We're going to try and knock it out. So let's jump into it. What is the victim mentality? It's a mindset where individuals consistently see themselves as victims of circumstances, often blaming external factors for their unhappiness. So consistently see yourself as the victim and you blame external factors for your unhappiness. So hang on to that. Common phrases of a victim mentality are going to be, why does this always happen to me? Or it's not my fault, or I can't catch a break. I'm guilty of this, guys. This is not something that, you know, goes away forever. I still struggle a lot with the victim mentality, especially living in a place like Midland, Texas. I just don't like it here. I don't like the city. I don't like the desert. I grew up in the woods. I grew up where there are pine trees everywhere and grass is green and it grows all over the place and it's fresh air and you don't have poisonous water that you're trying to drink and you have a different quality of human beings, right? So, I do this every time I go out in public in Midland. My wife can attest to this. It's something that I got to keep in check for myself, but I'm always bitching and moaning about how bad the roads are and how terrible drivers are and how stupid people tend to be around here. And then it turns around to why me? It's, wah, just bitching and moaning all the time. So that's a typical victim mentality. It's very immature and it's stupid, but I do struggle with it. Just want to be transparent with you guys. To get into this a little bit more, I want to clarify that experiencing real victimization, and I mean real victimization, like trauma and abuse, it's completely different from adopting a victim mentality as a long-term worldview. This has burned me a lot. I've been so mad about this for some years now because I used to do this. Yes, I have trauma, and yes, I have a history of being abused. However, there are a lot of things that I did that I adopted a worldview, victim mentality, and acted like that was the most crucial, crushing weight that I had to carry when there are people that actually went through traumatic events, right? And so I want to clarify that a little bit. I could give you an example, like, so for instance, like, I know, I think I said that in the first episode, but my dad is an abusive alcoholic. We grew up, I watched him almost kill my mom. I watched him drink and become a different human being, and even when he was sober, he was that way too. He has beat me. I know he's done that to my brother as well. There were years on end where I would have to go see him every other weekend, and it was always shoving me in a room. And if I whined, if I cried, if I said anything, I mean, I just got my ass whooped. And I'm not talking like spanked. I mean, like throwing me off of walls and stuff like that. And that's just how my dad is. He's been with multiple women and has abused all of them, according to them. And so, like, that's abuse, right? And that is trauma to a certain extent. I was also molested by a babysitter when I was a little kid, and so, like, that's trauma, right? Like, that's trauma and abuse. Those are real things, and I struggled a lot with that, especially going into rehab. That was part of my fourth step of that inventory, things that I held on to, and it was stuff that I never let go of, right? Then, you know, with my mom, she's an emotional abuser. She's a narcissistic manipulator. And so you grow up with that too. And I'm still experiencing that from her even today. So that's real trauma. That's real victimization versus somebody who, their fantasy team lost this week, and they adopt this victim worldview where it's like, oh my gosh, I never win. Everything is so tough. Why is it always me? And it's, you know, it's just shut your mouth. I don't really have a psychological answer for you. Just shut your mouth. Like, find out what's actually important, you idiot. I say that because I used to do that too. So some examples of this are like workplace struggles, you know, like your boss told you were going to get a raise and then you didn't get that raise. That is not genuine victimization. You will adopt a victim's worldview on that, because the thing is, when that happens, you now have options. You can go and apply for another job, right? You can take action behind this. Go and apply for another job. Go have a conversation with your boss, or continue to go to work every day, play the long game, and see how it pans out. Like, those are actions that you can take. Versus whining and crying and bitching and moaning about the fact that you didn't get that raise, and so you just wallow in self-pity forever, and you start treating people differently, and everything that you do is justified because you were wronged. So I hope that adds some clarity, helping you guys see the difference there. Failed relationships, you know, this is another one where you get your heart broken and you adopt this victim mentality as a long-term worldview. Okay, your heart's broken, but you have options. I'm gonna go find somebody else. I'm gonna try and rekindle that relationship, or I'm gonna take this time to grow individually, right? So there are your options. Or financial challenges. We all struggle with this too, to a certain level. These are all things that have action behind them that you can change the narrative, right? Versus someone who is abusive to you. Like when a parent is abusive to you, there's not a whole lot I could have done to change that, right? That was something that happened. I did nothing. Nobody deserves that. It's not just me, but like nobody deserves to be treated that way. You know, my mom being manipulative and being someone who lies about me and things like that. Like, no one deserves that, but that's just what happens. So, you know, fortunately as an adult now, you're able to take that, and that's where our last episode came into play, where we talk about boundaries. That's my action behind it. You haven't changed. You're going to continue to be abusive and neglectful and whatever. That's fine. I don't have to have you. But that took me taking time for myself and changing who I am, changing my narrative and growing as a human being, right? And I said it again last episode. One of the greatest things that I ever received from my parents was their dysfunction. I learned to be who I am today because of that, right? So all that to say, going back to it, I just want to clarify there is a difference between actual victimization, where there is abuse or trauma, versus adopting a victim mentality as a long-term worldview. Okay. Here's a little quote. Write it down. Put this on a t-shirt. I don't know. Victimhood sells you the illusion of safety, but it chains you to stagnation. Victimhood sells you the illusion of safety, but it chains you to stagnation. Again, that's what we were just talking about. If you're a victim, you never have to change. If it's all woe is me and everything is against me, then I never have to adjust. Everybody else is wrong. I'm right. I'm the poor, pitiful victim. I never have to do anything. And then I stay stagnant forever. I never grow, whatever. Again, this is another thing. I'm seeing this with like my parents, you know, especially my dad and I, we don't talk anymore because of this. And my mom and I were now at that point too, where they've never changed. They've been the same forever because they're victims, always and forever will be the victim. So let's talk about how does the victim mentality develop? This doesn't cover all of it, but here are just quick 3 ways that victim mentality will develop. As we talked about, the possible origins of the victim mentality is going to be the past trauma or abuse. That's one. Then your upbringing. If you have exposure to someone who is very pessimistic or blame oriented, and they are someone who was a role model for you, like a parent, then you're going to adopt that victim mentality as you get older. That's kind of an origin for the victim mentality. If you have someone who everything in the world is terrible, everybody is bad, nothing is good, or going back to the victim mentality where they blame every single person, but they never take accountability for themselves, you're going to adopt that victim mentality, especially if you're watching that from a role model as a kid. You're supposed to be watching your parents and learning how to live and grow and become a human being, right? And if all they're doing is blaming everybody else, if all they're doing is saying that everything is terrible, you're going to adopt a victim mentality. And then the third one, this is one that's very relevant now, but cultural or societal narratives that reinforce powerlessness. And what I mean by that is, like, let's talk about, oh gosh, man, I really don't want to get political here. I really don't want to, but let's talk about like the LGBTQ community, right? I have a couple of friends who are gay, and neither one of them blame the world. Neither one of them have this negative view of everybody else who isn't gay. And that's why we've connected so well. They know that I'm heterosexual. They know that I'm not gay, and we connected very quickly because they're just good human beings, and they're kind, and they're loving, and they're caring, and they're real. Versus you see a lot of this on social media where it's like these, you know, Christians will go and confront the gay community and tell them they're going all to hell. And that's stupid. And I hate that. But still, it's you get involved with a group of people who tell you that you're the victim. So therefore everything is justified. Right. And so this is the cultural or societal narrative that you adopt that's going to reinforce this powerlessness idea. We're gay. We're powerless. Nobody likes us, so we can act however we want. And then it gives the people who are genuinely gay a very bad look. The same thing with minority groups, anything like that. Or what's happened recently too is I've seen a lot of this from the white people of saying that we've been deemed as racist and we're terrible people. And I've even said this, just full transparency, I've said this myself, where it's frustrating because it seems like as a straight white Christian male, like I'm the enemy. I didn't do anything. I don't have any hatred in my heart for any of these people who are different. You can have your belief system and you can live your life the way that you want, as long as it's not hurting me, which it's not. I have no reason to look at you differently. But, you know, because I'm a Christian, that means that I hate anything that is not in line with Christian views and beliefs. Now, I hate sin for sure. Doesn't mean I hate the sinner, right? But that's another way. So again, the way that the possible origins of victim mentality is the past trauma or abuse, upbringing where you have exposure to a pessimist or a blame-oriented role model, and then the cultural or societal narratives that reinforce this idea of powerlessness. Okay, the psychological reinforcement of all this, it's the victim mentality that protects us from facing the uncomfortable truths or taking risks. Now, again, I'm the victim. I don't have to change. Everybody else has to change. Poor, pitiful me. Everybody else wronged me. So I never have to face the uncomfortable truth that maybe I'm an asshole. Maybe I have a problem. And then I don't have to face the risk of changing that. I did this especially as an alcoholic, drinking the way I was for 10 years, but especially getting to the point where I had so many people that were willing to tell me, hey, you may be pumping the gas there a little bit. Time to tap the brakes, huh? And I would take that, and I now hate you. You're an awful person. How dare you judge me like that? And because I had that mentality, I never had to change. I knew I needed to stop drinking. I knew I needed to stop living my life the way that I was, but I was able to be the victim. I told myself that I was the victim. And so I never had to change anything. And I didn't until it was too late, until a lot came crashing down. So it's another important one to pay attention to. The victim mentality protects us from facing uncomfortable truths or taking risks. And then the role of the negative feedback loops that you're going to have and the self-fulfilling prophecies, that's another part of this psychological reinforcement. So if I'm staying in this negative feedback loop and I'm constantly just negativity swirling all around, and then I have this ego that goes along with that, and the self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, this person's bad, and then I try and convince myself of that. It just gets to be real messy from a psychological stance. We're not going to get into the neurological side of it, of how it actually alters the brain of having the victim mentality, but there's some fascinating things that you can read about that and showing you how that negativity continues to grow. And I put a note down here. The more you think about yourself, the more miserable you are, because those things are misery, right? If all I'm doing is thinking about how bad everything is for me and how terrible people have treated me or whatever, then of course I'm going to be miserable, because that's all I'm thinking about. I'm so self-consumed. I'm the main player, and it's all about me, and nobody else matters because my feelings are hurt, and because I'm living in that misery. It's a negative feedback loop. I'm just staying in it. I'm not growing from it. Okay. The goal here isn't judgment, but it's the understanding. And that's the important thing to realize here. If you're dealing with a victim, especially as, me being a psychology student, like if I'm going into a position where I'm going to be working with people who have the victim mentality, which most people do, what I have to pay attention to is that I'm here for understanding. I'm not here for judgment. And that's the case with most psychological issues, by the way. But you yourself, if you are struggling with the victim mentality, you have to get to the point of understanding it more. You don't judge yourself, and don't let other people really judge you and come down on you that harshly, but get to the point where you're understanding it a little bit more. Okay, that's how we're going to start to grow from this. So now we're going to talk about the cost of holding on to the victim mentality, the impact on the personal growth. So you're going to have loss of accountability, which leads to the stagnation. We talked about that. And then the missed opportunities due to the fear of failure or rejection. Okay, this is going to be because you're an asshole, because you're a victim. Nobody wants to be around someone who is just a wet blanket, sad sop who blames everybody else and is mean and mad and whatever. So you're going to miss out on a lot of incredible opportunities for relationships, for careers, for whatever it may be, because of this fear of failure that stems from that victim mentality. And then also the rejection that you're going to receive because everybody thinks you're an asshole, because you are. And that's okay, because we're going to work on it. It's not okay okay, whatever. Then you have the effects on the relationship. This is going to cause a strain because you're going to be in a state of constantly blaming and constant pessimism, right? Just like you learned from your role model, you're going to now be this person who is blaming everything and everyone. And then you're going to be this constant pessimist. And nobody wants to be around that. Nobody. There's not one person who enjoys it. They may burned out by it. Like, no one wants to be around that level of negativity all the time, right? And then the other effect it's going to have on a relationship is the alienation from friends and family who feel drained by the negativity, right? So those two kind of play off of each other. The strain caused by the constant blame or pessimism, and then the alienation from friends and family who feel drained by your negativity, okay? And then there's the emotional toll of all of this. You're going to be in a state of chronic stress, resentment, and or the feelings of hopelessness. Again, this stays in that negative feedback loop that we talked about. From the psychological side of the victim mentality, you're constantly in this negative mindset. So you're going to have chronic stress, always resentful, and then you're going to have this feeling of hopelessness because that's all you're seeing, right? We talked about this in a previous episode too. If all of your problems and all of the issues are right here in front of your face, where's God? Where's your higher power? Where's your relief? This now is the biggest thing in your life because it's right in front of your face. It's even bigger than your family. It's bigger than anything else it's just, you're mad all the time, right? The other emotional toll this can take is the strong connection between the victim mentality and anxiety or depression. Again, go look up the studies of this. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So if you're staying in a victim mentality where you're going to have that chronic stress, the resentment, feeling of hopelessness, that connection between the victim mentality and anxiety and depression is huge, a lot. So it's another one to pay attention to. Again, cost of holding on to the victim mentality is impact on the personal growth, the effects it's going to have on the relationship, and then the emotional toll, right? The awareness is the first step towards this change. I know that's kind of cliche, but you have to be aware of this. And this is going back to saying that we're looking for understanding. We're not looking for judgment. We're just looking for understanding in this. So now let's talk about how we're going to break free of all of this. So the step one is going to be the awareness and the acknowledgement. Okay. It's time to practice self-reflection. You can do that through journaling, mindfulness, or therapy. And then you have to recognize patterns of blame and helplessness. So this is the self-reflection. This is digging in deep. If you'll go back and look at any of the other episodes, all of them have the underlying theme and the conclusion of getting to the point where you need to start to understand yourself better. How do you do that? You can journal, you can meditate, you can do practicing mindfulness, you can go to therapy to have someone help guide you to that point. As someone who is training to be a therapist, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that therapy is the only way. I just know that there are some people, some personality types, myself included, where I'm going to be much better if I have someone holding me accountable. Same thing with working out. If it's up to just me, I'll take a couple days off, which turn into a couple of months off of working out. I'll be super motivated for like 2 weeks. But if I know that someone's going to meet me at the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning and they're relying on me to be there, I got that fear of disappointment. I'll show up. I'll be there. Trust me. So that's what this self-reflection aspect is. If you need therapy, there's no shame in that game. Like, get it. If you need a friend to hold you accountable, to text you every morning and say, hey, look, did you pray this morning? Did you meditate? Whatever it is that you do to reflect in on yourself. But that's the important part. So step one, awareness and acknowledgement. Step two, take responsibility for your life. The empowerment through the small actionable change is going to be big here. It doesn't need to be some huge thing. You're not going to pull a 180 overnight, right? Small actionable change. Okay. This is part of taking responsibility. Shift from the why me mentality to the what can I do about it? We talked about that just a little while ago. Instead of complaining that someone wronged you, acknowledge it, be aware of it, and now say, okay, what can I do about it? Instead of why me. Why me doesn't allow you to grow. That's just whining. You're just complaining at that point. So you being the victim in that moment of saying, why me? You stay in stagnation. You're it. That's it. You're done. Don't try and grow. Don't try and do anything. Don't try and improve. Or what can I do about it? Right? Boss told me I was going to get a raise. I didn't get a raise. All of a sudden that changed. Am I going to cry about it now and do nothing? Am I going to wallow in self-pity and not go back to work? Or do I start applying for other jobs? Do I start applying for other positions within the company? Do I go and initiate a conversation with that boss and say, hey, I'm having a big issue with what's going on here. I just want to clarify and see if there's anything we could do. You know, these are actions that you can take. Small, actionable change, not the big 180s. So step one, awareness and acknowledgement. Step two, take responsibility for your life. And step three, reframe challenges as opportunities. This is a big growth perspective shift. It took me 30 years of my life to get to this point. Challenges are now opportunities, and those opportunities provide that growth, right? So an example of this is turning rejection into a lesson about persistence. We just talked about that. Again, for me, having to deal with my family now all of a sudden deciding to reject me for my past sins. Okay, I can whine about that. I can bitch and moan about it, and then I don't grow, which now directly affects my wife and my child and myself. Or I could take that and say, okay, how are we going to learn from it? How are we going to grow from it? It takes a lot of self-reflection. It takes a lot of processing through it, high accountability from people that I trust, getting quiet with God consistently. So these are all things that I could start to do so I'm moving forward. And it took less than 24 hours. I was surprised. I was very shocked when all of this went down, when the shit hit the fan with my family. It took less than 24 hours to just bounce back and be like, okay, that's the closure I needed. And that's what I saw it as, closure, not victimhood, not me whining and crying. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to see that closure. Now I can move. I'm broken free from those chains. It's great. So step 1, awareness and acknowledgement. Step 2, take responsibility for your life. Step 3, reframe challenges as opportunities. Step 4, seek support. We talked about this 2 episodes ago. Community is important. It doesn't have to be sitting around a campfire singing Kumbaya. It doesn't have to be going to meetings. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It just means that you have people in your life that you can trust. You have people in your life that are going to provide community for you, right? So the importance of community, mentorship, or professional help, unparalleled. Unparalleled. You need that. We're not made to do life alone, okay? Surround yourself with people who inspire resilience. That's a big one too, okay? Other people who have been through that same thing. I've been very fortunate on this journey, especially, but also meeting people in recovery who have gone through a lot of the same situations that I've gone through, who have experienced the same family member types that I've experienced. And that's been huge for me because you get to lean on those people and you get to go through all of the mess together. One of you may have already navigated through it, or one of you may be going through it currently and you both can meet up and now we're both going through this. We're going to walk through these trenches together until we can find a way out. Still, one way or the other, you're not doing all this alone, so it's great. So again, breaking free from the victim mentality. Step 1, awareness and acknowledgement. Step 2, take responsibility for your life. Step 3, reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. And step 4, seek support. So practical exercise here for you guys, because I'm trying to become a psychologist. So I wanted to give you some homework, but you can write down an instance where you felt powerless. Okay. And that could be anything. That could be someone cut you off in traffic. It could be, again, we'll keep using this example, but the boss told you that you were going to get a raise and then you didn't. It could be, something going on in your relationship, right? So this feeling of powerlessness, write down one instance where you felt that. Okay. And then list 3 things that are within your control. And that's important. They're within your control that could move you forward. So I would strongly encourage you to do this almost every time, right? Because this starts to shift your brain and saying, okay, maybe this isn't a hopeless situation. Yeah, I feel powerless, but here are some quick steps I could do to get out of that. Okay. And this is going to start to just rework your brain and help you to see that that's not the end of the world, right? It gets you out of that victim mentality. So in closing, I just want to recap real quick. So we talked about the victim mentality being consistently seeing yourself as the victim and often blaming external factors for your unhappiness. We also talked about the fact that experiencing real victimization, like trauma and abuse, is completely different than adopting a victim mentality as a long-term worldview. Okay. Victimhood sells you the illusion that you're safe, but it chains you to stagnation. Okay. So victim mentality can develop from past trauma or abuse, from your upbringing, seeing people who are pessimistic and blame oriented. These are people that are your role models, or cultural or societal narratives that are going to constantly reinforce this idea of powerlessness. Right. And then we saw that the psychological reinforcement is that the victim mentality protects us from facing uncomfortable truths or taking risks. You stay in this role of negative feedback, right? And so you never get better. You're just constantly banging yourself up and whatnot. Understand that the goal isn't judgment, it's understanding, right? Then the cost, we talked about how it has an impact on your personal growth. It has an impact and a huge effect on relationships because you're just a negative asshole and nobody wants to be around you. So change that, change it now. It's going to, my cameras are freaking out, sorry. It's going to be chronic stress, constant resentment, feeling of hopelessness. And then there's a huge connection, a very strong connection between the victim mentality, anxiety, and depression, right? So pay attention to that. And the awareness of all of this is the first step. That's how you're going to start to change. And then we talked about breaking free from that mentality. Step 1 is the awareness and the acknowledgement. Okay, this is where you're going to work on self-reflection and journaling and mindfulness, meditation, prayer, therapy. You're going to start to learn more about yourself. and then recognize those patterns of blame and hopelessness. Step 2 is where we're going to take responsibility for our lives. These are the baby steps, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So just the little things here and there that you can start to do that are all about the empowerment through the small actionable change. You're going to shift from that why me mentality to what can I do about it? Step 3 is reframing the challenges as opportunities for growth. And then step 4 is seeking that support, whatever that looks like. Whether it's someone you can trust, it's someone who you know is going to tell you the truth. Okay. And then our practical exercise of writing down some moment where we felt powerless. And then 3 things that we can do to move forward, right? 3 things that are possible for you to do that you have full control over. All right. So just finishing all this up, you are not defined. Get a little bit closer. You are not defined by your circumstances. Okay. You have the power to choose a new narrative for your life. You are not the victim of everything. You are not someone who gets to sit around and whine and cry and bitch and moan, because you're going to quickly find out that if that's the way you're going to live, you're going to start to be alone very quickly. And if you stay in that victim mentality and you continue to get isolated, you lose support, you lose any type of community, you're just going to spiral and stay in this negativity and have all this anxiety and depression and have all of this resentment. And that resentment we already did an episode on that. That resentment's going to hurt you. It doesn't hurt anybody else. Your victim mentality is the beginning of a resentment. The victim mentality is the beginning of you taking your life and saying, I want to destroy this by just being mad at everything. And it only hurts you. It doesn't hurt anybody else. I promise you that. I know that from experience. So as always, I'm here for you guys as someone who has maintained a victim mentality for over a decade, has come through it, been on the other side of it, and still struggles with it every now and then. Want to let you know that I'm here to talk. I'm here to help you out however I can. Right now, all that is posting the podcast and posting videos and doing what I can to just get a little bit of an outreach. Eventually, we'll have a little bit more down the pipeline as far as building a community, but here for you guys, always care about you a lot. Thank you so much for all the support. You guys are great. Keep your head up, keep your heart open, go help somebody. We'll catch you next time.